What makes a life worth living? It is the great central question of the human experience, a question that poets, philosophers, and prophets have wrestled with for millennia. But what if you were forced to answer that question, not as a hypothetical exercise, but as an urgent real-world deadline? What would you do with the time you had left? At the age of 36, Dr. Paul Kalanithi was standing at the very summit of a life of incredible achievement. He was about to complete a grueling, decade-long journey to become a fully qualified neurosurgeon. He was a brilliant scientist and a gifted writer who had spent his life studying the brain, the very seat of our identity and consciousness. He was a man who stood at the crossroads of life and death every single day, guiding his patients and their families through their most difficult moments. And then, in a moment of stunning and brutal irony, the doctor became the patient. He was diagnosed with stage 4 terminal lung cancer. His breathtaking and unforgettable memoir, When Breath Becomes Air, is the story of what happened next. But this is not just a story about dying, it is a profound, philosophical, and deeply moving inquiry into what it means to truly live. It is the final, beautiful, and life-affirming gift from a man who, in facing his own mortality, taught the rest of us how to live with more grace, more courage, and more meaning. To understand Paul Kalanithi's journey with death, you first have to understand his lifelong journey with a single driving question: what gives life meaning? His story begins not in a hospital but in the world of books. As a young man, he was a brilliant and passionate student of literature and philosophy. He believed that the deepest truths about the human condition, about morality, about meaning, could be found in the great works of the past. He earned degrees in English literature and the philosophy of science. He was on a path to become a writer, a philosopher, a man of words, but he began to feel a sense of unease. He felt that the answers he was finding in books were too abstract, too removed from the raw, visceral reality of human experience. He writes that he was searching for a place where the questions of life and death were not just debated, but were confronted, head-on. And he realized that the place where these philosophical questions became real, tangible, and urgent was in the world of medicine. So he made a radical career pivot. He decided to go to medical school. His goal was not just to become a doctor in the technical sense. His goal was to find a place where he could directly confront the relationship between the brain, the physical biological organ, and the mind, the seat of our thoughts, our values, our love, our very sense of self. And he chose the most demanding and most profound specialty of all, neurosurgery. The middle section of the book is a deep and visceral dive into the grueling and morally complex world of a neurosurgical residency. It is a world of 100-hour work weeks, of chronic sleep deprivation, and of constant high-stakes life-and-death decisions. This is the crucible where Kalanithi is forged. He is no longer just a philosopher of the abstract, he is a practitioner on the front lines of human suffering. He learns the incredible technical skill of operating on the human brain, the most complex and delicate object in the known universe. But more importantly, he learns about the profound, almost sacred responsibility that comes with that skill. He understands that when you are operating on a person's brain, you are not just operating on a piece of tissue. You are operating on their identity. A millimeter in one direction or another could be the difference between a person returning to their family, or a person losing their ability to speak, to love, to be who they are. He becomes a master, not just of the scalpel, but of the difficult human conversations that surround his work. He is the one who has to sit with families and explain a devastating diagnosis. He is the one who has to help them navigate the impossible choices between a life with severe disability and a peaceful death. He becomes a guide for his patients, a shepherd who is tasked with walking with them right up to the very threshold of life and death, and helping them to understand what a meaningful life would look like for them, given their new reality. He is asking his patients the very same question that will one day become his own. After 10 years of this brutal and profound training, he is at the finish line. He has job offers from the top universities in the country. He and his wife Lucy, also a doctor, are finally ready to start their own lives, to have a family. He is at the absolute peak, the moment his long, difficult journey is about to pay off. And it is in that exact moment that the universe plays its cruel, ironic trick. The story takes its central, tragic turn. Kalanithi, the doctor who has diagnosed countless patients, begins to notice a series of alarming symptoms in his own body. unexplained weight loss, excruciating back pain, a racking cough, and on a hospital bed looking at the images of his own CT scan, his two worlds collide. The images show that his lungs are filled with tumors, that the cancer has spread to his bones and to his liver. In an instant, his identity is completely shattered. He is no longer Dr. Kalanithi, the brilliant neurosurgeon, the active agent of healing. He is now Paul Kalanithi, the patient, the passive recipient of a terminal diagnosis. The future he had so meticulously planned for, the future he had sacrificed his entire young adulthood to build, has been completely and totally erased. He describes this reversal with a profound and heartbreaking clarity. The man who had spent his life guiding patients through the valley of the shadow of death was now a resident in that same valley. He had the vocabulary, he had the scientific knowledge, but he quickly realizes that knowing the biology of cancer is a completely different thing from experiencing the existential terror of it. He writes, "I had to learn to live in a different way, seeing death not as a black and white confrontation, but as an elusive, shimmering presence." Navigating the in-between, how to live when you are dying. This is the philosophical heart of the book. It is the story of Kalanithi's final 2 years, a period of what he calls living in the in-between. It is an exploration of how you continue to live a meaningful life when the future is no longer a solid landscape, but a foggy, uncertain, and rapidly shrinking territory. He and his wife Lucy are forced to confront a series of almost impossible questions. The most important of these is, should they have a child? How could they bring a child into the world knowing that her father would not be there to see her grow up? But they also ask the opposite question. Would not having a child be a final, tragic concession to the cancer? In the end, they make a courageous and life-affirming choice. They decide to have a daughter, Katie. It is an act of profound hope, a vote for the future, even in the face of a future that is radically uncertain. He also has to grapple with the question of his work. What should he do with the time he has left? His first instinct is to return to the operating room. In a period of remission, with incredible strength and determination, he does just that. He returns to his grueling residency, finding a deep sense of purpose and identity in the work he loves. But eventually the cancer returns, and his body is too weak to endure the physical demands of surgery. And so, he makes his final pivot. He decides to return to his first love. He decides to write. The man who went into medicine to find the reality that he couldn't find in books, now returns to books to find a final and lasting form of meaning. This memoir, the one we are reading, becomes his final act. It is his new surgery, his way of making sense of his own life and of leaving a final gift for his infant daughter, and for the world. The final act, when breath becomes air. The final section of the book, written as his health is rapidly declining, is a series of beautiful and profound meditations on what truly matters. As his own future is stripped away, his focus on the present moment becomes incredibly sharp. He finds a deep and abiding joy in the simple human things, the love of his wife, the feeling of his newborn daughter sleeping on his chest, the conversations with his family and friends. He realizes that the meaning of his life is not to be found in his long list of future accomplishments, but in the richness of the relationships and the connections he has right now. He writes about facing death not with terror, but with a kind of clear-eyed acceptance. He is not fighting a battle against cancer, he is living with cancer. He is trying to find a way to live with grace and dignity, right up to the very end. Paul Kalanithi died in March of 2015 before he could finish this book. The final heartbreaking and beautiful chapter is an epilogue written by his wife Lucy. She describes his final days, his courage, and his peaceful death. And she explains that his ultimate goal in writing this book was to help others understand that the experience of death is an integral part of life. He wanted to help people to face their own mortality with a little less fear and a little more understanding. The ultimate message of When Breath Becomes Air is a difficult but profoundly life-affirming one. It is a gift, left behind by a brilliant and courageous man. It is a gift that teaches us that the confrontation with our own mortality is not a morbid or depressing act. It is the very thing that gives our lives their urgency, their beauty, and their meaning. It is a reminder that while we cannot always choose the length of our lives, we can always choose their depth. It is a deep and essential inquiry into what it means to live a good life. If you believe that we must grapple with the reality of death to truly understand how to live, then you are in the right place. Welcome to Geeky Philosopher. Subscribe and let's continue to explore the most important questions of the human experience, together.